Thank you so much, sir. Sir, please, you can go ahead. Let's appreciate him.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Emmanuel, and thank you, colleagues, for the privilege to be here. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, everyone, depending on your time zone. My name is Ohemu Godwin Pius, and it feels really good to be on the call with every one of you today. A big thanks to the Babcock University Antimicrobial Resistance Club and also to the InterVarsity Antimicrobial Resistance Initiative for putting all of this together. I consider myself amazingly fortunate to be invited to do this and also to serve as a mentor to a couple of individuals who are very passionate about AMR and who want to improve themselves on these subjects matter. So for today's presentation, I'm going to be speaking to us on the topic that you have on the screen, One Health Approach, Fighting Antimicrobial Resistance Across Humans, Animal, and the Environment. And very sincerely, we want to focus on collaborative strategies for global health security. That is, how can we work together, either you are working in the animal sector or in the human sector, or you are working in the environment, how can we collaborate together? How can we synergize together, to have, global health security? So that is what this conversation is going to be all about. One health approach on AMR across sector of human sector, animal sector, and also the environment as well. So to start with, this is going to serve as the outline of my presentation today. We'll look at the introduction to antimicrobial resistance and its global impact. We'll look at understanding the One Health approach. That is, what exactly is this stuff called One Health approach? We look at AMR in human health, in animal health, and even in the environment. Then we'll look at the interconnected drivers of antimicrobial resistance. We'll look at strategies for a One Health approach to combat AMR, and then future directions, innovations, and collaborations. And then we conclude, the presentation. Then you can ask your question, and I'll be able to share my honest response on that. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you are ready, I am ready. I'd like you to grab your notepad or your device, take notes, jot down your questions if you have any. At the end of the talk, you can ask your question, and I will give my honest reply on that. So the first thing before us today is, what exactly is this thing called antimicrobial resistance? Of course, this is Babcock University Antimicrobial Resistance Club. And when you tell somebody that this club is an antimicrobial resistance club, the first question that will come to their mind is, what exactly is antimicrobial resistance? There are thousands and thousands of definitions as per what antimicrobial resistance actually is. But this evening, I'm going to share with us, the definition that myself and 6 other colleagues of mine, came up with a couple of months ago in a paper that we published with the Journal of Antimicrobial Chemotherapy. So to us, antimicrobial resistance is not a disease. Okay, it's not a disease. It is a phenomenon. It is an occurrence. It is a situation that occurs when drugs that were originally designed to kill or to inhibit the growth of bacteria or the growth of parasites, protozoa, fungi, and all of that, those drugs actually are no longer effective because the bacteria that cause these particular infections, they have developed what we call resistance to the potent effect of these drugs in the system. So we call this antimicrobial resistance. It is a phenomenon which occurs when drugs such as antibiotics, antiviral, antiparasitic, antifungis, and antiprotozoan designed to kill or to inhibit the growth of disease-causing organisms become ineffective. In other words, you can be down with a bacterial infection and you take antibiotics, for instance, and the antibiotics is not going to work. You can be down with a malaria infection, for instance, and you buy anti-malaria drugs and you consume them and you are still down with malaria. What you are experiencing at that moment is that the disease-causing organism in your body system have developed resistance to the potent effect of the drug itself, and therefore the drug is not going to work. So this situation that can occur in bacteria, in fungi, in virus, in protozoa, all these things put together, they call them antimicrobial resistance, because these drugs that are used to treat these infections, they are all called antimicrobials. So antibiotics is antimicrobial, antiparasitic antifungal, antiprotozoan, all of these, elements fall under the household name of antimicrobials. And when there are situations of resistance to the potent effect, we call this antimicrobial resistance. How did this all come into existence? The issue of antimicrobial resistance actually came, all started, based on the discovery of antibiotics by a man called Alexander Fleming. And this discovery was a game changer for the health sector because before the advent of antibiotics, diseases, bacterial infections were actually killing people in their thousands. And due to accidental discovery, quote unquote, accidental discovery, Fleming was able to discover antibiotics, and it has been used. It is a wonder drug that has been used to treat bacterial infections in different settings. But the warning is this. When Fleming gave his Nobel Peace Prize inaugural lecture in 1945, he gave a warning. I had to go through that speech that he gave when he was being awarded Nobel Peace Prize alongside his colleague. And I noted there that even Fleming himself actually gave a warning. It was more like he gave a prophecy that in the nearest future, people are likely to abuse these wonder drugs. And if they do, this and this will likely be the consequences. So as you can see on your screen, I just pulled out a paragraph of that presentation, that speech of Fleming in 1945. And he said, I would like to sound one note of warning. And indeed, it was a warning. It is not difficult to make microbes resistant to penicillin in the laboratory by exposing them to concentrations not sufficient to kill them. And the same thing has occasionally happened in the body. The time may come, according to Fleming, the time may come. It was a conditional statement. But to be very honest with you, the time has already come when penicillin can be bought by anyone in the shops. Then there is the danger that the ignorant man may easily underdose himself, and by exposing his microbes to non-lethal quantities of the drug, make the bacteria that cause this infection in his body system to become resistant. So when Fleming discovered penicillin back then, it was a wonder drug and it caused a lot of turnaround. But the problem is that a time will come whereby the ordinary man can walk into the chemist shop or the pharmacy shop and then request. So 79 years after Fleming's warning, where are we as a people and as individuals? Where are we? Very recently, 2025, this year that we are in, a study led by a group of researchers actually noted that flies in Nigerian hospitals actually carry antimicrobial resistant gene in them. That flies are carriers of antimicrobial resistant gene in Nigerian hospitals. And this is more like a workflow surveillance of AMR bacteria carried by arthropod pests in hospital setting, particularly in our dear country, Nigeria. It's a very big issue. So no longer, it's not just about human beings carrying antimicrobial resistant gene in their body system. Even flies in our hospital settings actually are fully involved. I invite you to go look for this paper on the internet, and then you read and you see the magnificent data that these guys actually assessed before they published this particular research. And then again, the same group of researchers from the INEOS Oxford Institute actually carried out another research again, and they told us that birds, like dogs and crows that live close to humans, actually harbor in their body system antibiotic resistant gene that is even greater than that which you can find even in the human system as well. We have a very big problem. And again, last year, 2024, there was a study that was released that children or babies who were born in Nigeria actually have resistance to colistin. Colistin is more like the last line of antibiotic. Okay, so ignorance actually has had a big toll on us as a people. And this ignorance arises from the abuse, the misuse, and the overuse of antimicrobials in human, animal, and in the environment. And if nothing is done urgently, chances are that the damage that this particular situation has caused us is going to increase the more even as we proceed into the new the years ahead. So let's take a quick look at what is the current global impact of antimicrobial resistance in the human and in the human, animal, and in the environment as well. According to Graham, which is an antimicrobial resistance research body in Oxford, 39.1 million deaths is likely to occur between 2025 and 2050 if nothing is done urgently, if collective urgent action is not taken to curb the rise and the spread of antimicrobial resistance in different settings. Also, if you look at this map on the right-hand side, you see the death attributable to antimicrobial resistance every year. This is more like a forecast of the death of our brothers, sisters, and fellow human beings who are likely to die every year. As from 2050, if nothing is done urgently to curb the rise and the spread of these resistant genes in different, I was saying, Graham reported that 39.1 million deaths is likely to occur between 2025 and 2050 if nothing is done urgently, if there is no urgent collective action taken by nations of the world and by different sectors of our world as well. And then there's also this map on the right-hand side. As you can see, it is death attributable to AMR every year by 2050. What is of great concern to me is that these figures that you can see on your screen, they are not figures of inanimate objects, neither are they figures of animals or figures of chicken or something. These are figures of human beings, like 4,730,000 individuals are likely to die in Asia every year by 2050 if nothing is done. 4,150,000 individuals are likely to die in Africa every year if nothing is done by 2050. So antimicrobial resistance is not just AMR, it is bigger than what we can ever think of. Lives are being lost. People are actually spending longer days in the hospital because of this particular challenge that we are in. And the WHO actually has recognized AMR as a top global health threat. And as I said earlier, AMR does not respect national borders. It affects everyone, everywhere, every time. And so we have to work together as a people to make sure that we curb the rise and the spread of antimicrobial resistance. So how do we do this? We can only do this using the One Health approach. And what exactly is the One Health approach? The One Health approach, or One Health itself, is an approach that acknowledges that the health of human, animal, and our shared environment are closely connected. The health of humans, the health of animals, the health of our shared environment are closely connected. And when we recognize this, One Health aims to improve health outcomes, prevent disease outbreak, combat antimicrobial resistance, and ensure food safety and environmental sustainability. So as individuals, we are human beings, we have animals around, and then we have the natural environment. What actually affects the humans can actually affect the animals. What affects the animals can actually affect the humans. And what affects both the humans and the animal can also affect the environment. And what affects the environment can actually affect the humans and the animals as well. So there is this level of interconnectedness between the human, the animal, the plants, and the natural environment that we find ourselves in. So if we are talking about addressing the issue of antimicrobial resistance, addressing the issue of drug resistance, we really have to look at it from the One Health lens. That is, have this consciousness that our health, the human health, the animal health, and even the environment that we find ourselves, we all share something together. And for us to address the upsurge of AMR, we must address it holistically. Not that we are looking at the humans alone and then we neglect the animals or we neglect the environment. We must look at the human, look at the animals, and at the same time, look at the environment as well. That is called the One Health approach. What is antimicrobial resistance in human health? What is the current trend of AMR in human health? What are the drivers and what are the potential consequences of these issues? Firstly, The drivers of antimicrobial resistance in human health, as I showed us in one of the pictures that we saw earlier, overuse, abuse, and misuse of antibiotics is a major driver of the emergence and the spread of antimicrobial resistance in different settings, particularly in the human sector, in the human health. Overuse, abuse, and misuse of antibiotics. It might shock you to know that antibiotics are drugs that are designed specifically, and I use the word, the medical students on the call can actually shed more light on this. Antibiotics are drugs that are specifically designed to treat bacteria-only infection. Bacteria-only infection. They are wonder drugs and they target bacteria alone. So in other words, if you are down with an infection, for instance, if you don't carry out diagnostic tests to be sure whether this infection is caused by bacteria or by fungi or by virus, and you just go to the nearest store and you buy augmentin or you buy amoxicillin, if the infection was not caused by a bacteria and you are taking amoxicillin or you are taking ampicillin or ampiclos, you are actually abusing antibiotics at that particular moment, because antibiotics are supposed to be taken in full dose when somebody has been diagnosed and the result proves that that person is down with a bacteria infection. Only then can you take antibiotics. Likewise, you might be down with a parasitic infection and you are going to take antibiotics thinking that taking the antibiotics is going to help you or is going to treat the infection. You are actually killing normal floras in your body system. And eventually, in the nearest future, if you break down with a bacterial infection, whereby your body needs antibiotics to fight the infection, because you have already subjected the bacteria in your body system to drugs that were not necessary at the moment, those disease-causing organisms are going to develop resistance to the potent effect of the drugs. And then you take ampicillin, you take ampiclos, you take amoxicillin, you consume as many parts as possible, and you are still ill. That is a major driver of the rise of antimicrobial resistance in different settings. Overuse, abuse, and misuse of antibiotics. Poor infection prevention and control, lack of new antibiotics. When last did you hear that a new antibiotics has been released? Big pharmas are not even investing in producing new antibiotics. And the ones that we have, we are already losing them. We are losing them due to the fact that they are being abused, they are being overused, and they are being misused in different settings. What they were designed to do, the disease that they were actually designed to fight or to kill or to inhibit, they are no longer effective in fighting those infections, and we have a very big problem. So what is the consequences of this particular issue? Treatment failure. Treatment failure, you are sick of an infection, you get treated, nothing is happening, you spend longer days in the hospital, increased rate of mortality, people are dying in their numbers, and then higher healthcare costs, because when you take the first line of antibiotics, it doesn't work, you move to the next one, you move to the next one, you move to the next one, and then you go to the antibiotics of last resort, like the beta-lactams, like carbapenem, imipenem, and meropenem. You take these stuffs, and these antibiotics are antibiotics that you are supposed to take when you have tried every available options and there's no result. Then can you go and take these antibiotics like colistin? And these antibiotics are drugs that also come with adverse side effects. But because of abuse of these wonder drugs, even when you take antibiotics of last resort, there is nothing that is going to happen. And if that disease of yours was caused by a bacteria, woe betides you, because death is going to just be awaiting you. Death to be awaiting you, because there is nothing that anybody can do to get you, healed of that particular infection. And as you keep buying the drugs, you are spending more money, for healthcare and all of that. So antimicrobial resistance is present in the human sector, and a major driver of this particular issue is abuse, overuse, and misuse, poor infection prevention and control, and lack of new antibiotics. And because of this particular issue, we are having issue of longer hospital stay, increased mortality, higher healthcare costs in in the human sector. Let's look at AMR in the animal health, in agriculture, and in veterinary perspective. What are the drivers of AMR in the animal husbandry? Number one, non-therapeutic use of antimicrobials. More often than not, farmers use antibiotics not for the treatment of diseases that these animals are down with. A lot of farmers use antibiotics as growth promoting agents. That is to help the animals to grow, to get bigger and bigger. And more often than not, in our own local setting here, we believe that bigger is better. In other words, if you go to the poultry farms, you see that you want to buy a chicken that is so big, a chicken that is so fat, a chicken that can't even lift it. I don't want to say his or her leg. A chicken that can't even walk. Like the chicken is so dull, and you love it, and you're like, oh man, bigger is better. Give me that big chicken there. I want that one. It's so big. That chicken must have been fed with a heavy dose of antibiotics. That chicken must have been overdosed with antibiotics, that the chicken is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And we feel that bigger is better. Oftentimes, bigger is not better. You have to be very, very careful of what you consume, either in piggery, either in poultry, either in cattle pens, and all of that. Non-therapeutic use of antimicrobials. Farmers these days, particularly the poultry farmers, and I'm emphasizing on this because I know that Babcock University is situated in Ogun State, where we have the Obasanjo farm. And every day, people go to the farm to buy chicken. In fact, people are even going into poultry business. People are going into aquaculture as a very profitable venture. There is nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with those ventures. But my major concern is that, are you using antibiotics prudently the way it ought to be used? Do you use antibiotics to treat infection in your farm, or you use antibiotics as growth promoting agent? You are endangering the lives of your fellow human beings, and that should not be done. Intensive farming practices is also a driver of the emergence of antimicrobial resistance gene. Oftentimes, people have a very small space and they want to rear 1,000 birds, 2,000 birds in a very small space. The smaller the space, the more heat the animals actually release from their body system. And the more heat they release from their body system, the more opportunity these bacteria have to spread. In fact, poor biosecurity measures is also another problem. For example, for those who practice poultry business or who practice poultry farming, they know very, very well that when you leave your house and you're going to your poultry farm, the clothes that you wore from your house, the shoe that you wore from your house, as soon as you get to the poultry farm, you are not supposed to enter the poultry farm with those clothes and with that pair of shoe of yours. You are supposed to go into a room where you change, like you drop the clothes that you came from your house with, you drop the shoe that you came from your house with, and then you put on another cloth, another cloth entirely, another pair of shoe, another pair of gloves entirely before you enter into the poultry to meet the birds. And when you are done handling the birds, you actually take off, put on the one that you came with from your house, and then you return home. That is what is supposed to be done. But down here, what we see every day is that the same clothes that the poultry farmer wears to the farm or wears to the farm is what he wears when he's attending to the birds, and when he's done, he's going back home, he wears the same thing, and all, thereby transferring from poultry, from farm to table, transferring resistant gene from farm to table. All of these things are very, very poor. And what is the impact? We have issues of zoonotic disease transmission. We have foodborne disease transmission. We have AMR in foodborne sectors and in foodborne in food chain and all of that. So we have to be very careful, be mindful of our practices in agriculture, in aquaculture, and even in animal husbandry, because all of these things actually have their own implication as well. AMR in the environment. AMR in the environment, pollution and pathways. What are the drivers? What are the sources of AMR pollution? Pharmaceutical waste. The pharma industries, of course, they must generate waste, no doubt. But the issue is when these wastes are being generated, how are they being disposed of? Pharmaceutical waste, agricultural runoff, maybe you apply manure, organic manure that you got from the poultry farms, and perhaps the farm where you went to get the manure from, that farm actually, the farmer actually used antibiotics as growth promoting agent. And you know that when these birds are being overfed with antibiotics, oftentimes they defecate, and samples, traces of these antibiotics are also found in their feces. And these things can actually, be spread across board, be spread to the environment via surface runoff and all of that. And then hospital and household waste water. All of these things contribute. And what are the pathways to human food sources? How many of us actually can proudly drink our river water today? How many of us can proudly say, I'm going to the public area, and then you fetch a cup of water and you're fine to drink it? It's not, you will not do it because those water sources are already contaminated. Perhaps they are contaminated by industrial effluent, perhaps they are contaminated by pharmaceutical waste, and all of these things endanger the life of individual. Again, soil and air dispersal. These are issues that actually contribute to the rise and spread of antimicrobial resistance in different states. So let's look at the interconnectedness of these drivers of antimicrobial resistance gene environment. Human AMR links to animals. Of course, this work in the sense that we are going to have drug-resistant infection from food consumption. As you buy the meat, perhaps the meat are not even well cooked, they are undercooked. And you know that there are some bacteria that have the natural capacity to even survive under a high temperature. There's one that we call strain 121. We know that water boils at 100 degrees C. Strain 121 has the capacity to exist normally under the temperature of 121 degrees C. So if strain 121 happens to be a bacteria that must have developed resistant gene to antibiotics at a poultry farm, and you buy the chicken from that farm, and you can have cooked the food is so soft, it is fine, the bacteria must have died. That is it. It's under 121 degrees C, and your water boils at 100 degrees C. The food that you cook, actually, it's at 100 degrees C because there's nothing higher than that for us in this climate that we find animals actually causes drug AMR linked to the environment. In the case and water actually positionally environmental antimicrobial resistance gene linked to the humans. Once you consume contaminated water sources, or perhaps in the case of airborne infection, of course, you come down with this issue. So we must take care of the environment that we find ourselves. We must take care of the plants that are in our area. We must also make sure that we take care of the animals, that these animals, if they break down with infection, we use antibiotics to treat the infection and not as growth promoting agent. And then in the human sector as well, that we use antibiotics prudently in everything that we do. So what are the strategies for a One Health approach to combat antimicrobial resistance in the human, in the animal, in plants, and in the environment? Number one, surveillance and monitoring. You have to surveil. Look at the poultry farms that we have around. How many of them have a checklist of whether they use antibiotics or whether they don't use antibiotics? How many of them actually have a checklist of adhering to good infection prevention protocol in their setting? And in all of their dealings, how many of them? So we have to carry out surveillance and we have to monitor. And when you do surveillance and you monitor, you must make sure that data is being shared across sector. Data is shared across the human sector, is shared across the animal sector, is also shared across
the environment. The reason for this is that it is the sharing of this data that will help us to make sound and intelligent decision as per what we need to do in order for us to put an end to the emergence and spread of antimicrobial resistant gene in these sectors that we have considered. Number two, regulation and policy, banning non-essential antibiotic use in agriculture. How I wish that the Nigerian government can actually come out clearly and make a pronouncement and said, henceforth, all farmers, cattle rearers, poultry farmers, those who are rearing catfish and all of that, that they should never use A, B, C kinds of antibiotics, or don't use antibiotic A, antibiotic B, antibiotic C in your farming system. I wish there are rules and regulations like that. I was amazed when we were having a call with a team in one of the African countries, and we were actually having discussion around AMR. And one of the participants on the call told us that what is trending right now in their own climb is that HIV drugs, that is, the drugs that are meant for HIV patients, that when you are down with the virus, of course, you know, one of the first symptoms is that you start losing weight. A farmer, a poultry farmer, actually observed that if somebody who is down with HIV and the first symptom is weight loss, and when you start taking these antiretroviral drugs, you are normal. In fact, some people take it and they add weight and they get bigger and they are so robust. The farmer was like, what if I also serve these HIV drugs to my birds? And he went to the drugstore, claimed that he had HIV, and they were giving him, the HIV drugs, and he was busy feeding the drugs to the birds, and the birds were actually getting bigger. These are the practices that we have because there is no proper check and balance in our regulatory system. I don't know what we are doing as a country when we cannot have a database or people who are actually involved in a particular business, when there's no surveillance team or task force going around to make sure that these laws that have been made, they are being followed to the letter. Because a lot of persons, because of their greed for gain, they are endangering the lives of individuals, the lives of innocent citizens. Go to UPTH or go to Luth or go to BMH and you see individuals who are dying in pain because they are down with one particular infection or the other that was caused by antimicrobial resistant gene. And there is nothing that the doctors would do to give them life or to give them health. They are just waiting to die. Innocent citizens, little children who have never taken a dose of colistin in our dear country, Nigeria, are now resistant to colistin, a very, very powerful antibiotics. How is this possible? This is possible due to what we call horizontal gene transfer. I can be here in Port Harcourt, Nigeria. I can abuse antibiotics, and through environmental factor, through cross-national border travel and all of that, through horizontal gene transfer, I am the one who is abusing this. Bacteria in my system have developed resistance to this gene or to this drug because of horizontal gene transfer. That is more like an exchange of gene between bacteria as they multiply, as they replicate. Emmanuel, who is down in Ogun State, can go down with an infection that is caused by a bacteria that is resistant to the drug that I have abused in my own environment here. So we have a very big issue. Regulation and policy is very, very necessary if we really want to win the fight against antimicrobial resistance. And majorly, I look forward to when we are going to have rules and regulation to ban the use of non-essential antibiotics in agriculture, in aquaculture, in piggery, and even in our poultry farms. Infection prevention and control. This is a very good strategy. It's a One Health strategy that can be used to actually reduce the emergence and the spread of antimicrobial resistant gene in different settings. For example, hand hygiene alone has a great way, like it can play a great role just for you that every engagement, before and after, if you can wash your hand before and after every engagement, of course, you'll be able to at least cut down the spread of disease organisms in your immediate environment. As you're about to enter the poultry farm, you wash your hands. As you are leaving the poultry farm, you wash your hands. When you get to your house, before you start engaging with your children and your loved ones, you wash your hands. If you can do this very, very well, sincerely, you will see significant result. I was amazed when during the COVID issue, so many institutions, our universities, our health sectors, they constructed a hand washing basin at the entrance, at the entrance to the facility, at the entrance to offices, and all of that. But as soon as COVID-19 actually was pronounced, perhaps maybe pronounced over, or the issue actually subsided, just go around. I told a colleague of mine that we should do a study. We should do like a qualitative study of whether those hand washing basin or hand wash basin that we are erected at various centers, let's visit like 5 or 10 universities and carry out like observation and see for ourselves how many of them are functioning based on the data that we've gotten so far. It is a shame that most of those facilities are either abandoned, a lot of them are already vandalized. I will stress on this as we move on, in our conversation. So what are the future direction? What innovation and what collaborative initiative can we embark on to help us win the fight against antimicrobial resistance? I propose 5 major things that we can do. Number 1 is bottom-up awareness approach. Bottom-up awareness. I love the bottom-up awareness to do with get to the communities, the local communities, and getting them enlightened and informed about the issue of antimicrobial resistance. For example, what we are doing here is more like professionals educating professionals to educate other professionals. What I'm doing with you guys today is more like professionals educating professionals to educate other professionals. But what if we take this enlightenment or these seminars down to the rural area in one local government in Ogun State, perhaps in Akpaladija local government, or in Adodo or local government, or somewhere, or in Abeokuta, one rural area where a farmer is unconsciously, out of ignorance, is feeding the birds or is abusing antibiotics. What if we take this enlightenment campaign down to them in those areas, and we sit them down in town hall meeting? What if we call the leaders of the community together? And what if we call the youth together? What if we visit churches and mosques and engage the audience during worship service in presentation on the dangers of abuse of antimicrobials in different settings? Don't you think it will go a long way? But what we practice right now in the AMR space is professionals are educating professionals to educate more professionals. Why the people who are at the grassroots are either left untouched? As you go to your house, perhaps you meet your roommates, you meet your colleagues, let the awareness actually be taken down to your colleagues. The person that you share the same room with or the same hostel space with, enlighten the person on the need for him or her to use antibiotics prudently in his or her own corner of the world. And it's going to go a long way in helping us to win the fight against AMR. So, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to use this time to encourage us, encourage each and every one of us that even right from your family, during your family gathering, your family devotion, somebody should discuss about antimicrobial resistance. Because if as a father, you are aware of the danger of the abuse of AMR or the abuse of antibiotics in your own family, you'll be able to raise champions who will stand and know that antibiotics are to be used for bacteria-only infection, antiparasitic are to be used for parasite-only infection, antifungals are to be used for fungal-only infection. If you don't do this, we'll continue in our ignorance and we'll continue to lose ourselves in numbers. Look at the forecast. 39.1 million individuals are likely to die by 2050, between 2025 and 2050, if collective action is not taken. We cannot sit down and fold our hands and expect the government to do everything for us. We must take collective responsibility for the well-being of ourselves and that of our loved ones. Number two, investment in new antimicrobials and alternatives. Sometimes we might want to explore the capacity of plants, like phytochemicals. Okay, we can use plants, as alternative. Research are ongoing that test the potent effects of some plants as close alternatives to synthetic antibiotics. We must also look at how we can strengthen international policies and funding. And then again, digital health and AI-driven surveillance. We cannot be working from one farm to the other. And therefore, we can use digital or we can use AI to drive surveillance in different settings. And then finally, capacity building in LMIC. And this is what Babcock University Antimicrobial Resistance Club is doing. We want to build capacity. We want to create the awareness, the consciousness in the minds of your club members that we have a very big task at hand and that we must actually tell somebody to tell another person so that everybody can be aware and be able to act on what they are supposed to do to cut down on the rise and spread of antimicrobial resistant gene in their own setting. Ladies and gentlemen, united sectors for a healthier future for each and every one of us. What is our key takeaway from today's presentation? I've been able to prove to you that antimicrobial resistance is a shared problem that requires one health solution. You cannot take care of the humans alone at the expense of the animal and the environment, and you expect that you will win the fight against antimicrobial resistance. It's not possible. It's not going to work because the human, the animal, the plant, and the environment that we find ourselves, we are interconnected. We are interconnected, and if you want to address this global health concern, this global health issue, you must address it amicably, holistically, across the various sectors that are involved in this thing. We look at the human health, the human sector, the animal sector, the environmental sector, and even the agriculture is also a very important area. So we must strengthen collaboration across these sectors in order for us to win the fight against AMR. We must promote responsible antibiotic use, support policies and research for sustainable solution. And then, last but not the least, my dear friend, the key word in all that we have said this evening is aware. The key word in all that we have said this evening is aware. And I want to be sure if everybody on the call is actually listening to me or I'm just speaking to my screen this evening. Can you just do me a favor and type in the chat box the word aware? I just want to see how many of us are actually involved in today's presentation. Can you type in the chat box the word aware? Just one person has done that so far. So I can say I have one person who's listening to me. 2, 3. Let's see if we can get 10. Yes, 5. Just type in the chat box the word aware. The word aware. Okay, so I can say that I have 6. I have 6 persons who are actually listening to the conversation out of the number that we have on the call. No problem. The key takeaway in all of this is aware. And what do we mean when we say aware? Through awareness campaign, we do our best to make sure that individuals are enlightened about how connected the human health, animal health, plants, and the environment are linked together. So we are trying to raise the awareness. But however, By aware, I have a couple of meaning here. The A in aware means advocate. We must advocate for the prudent use of antimicrobials in different settings. We must advocate for responsible antibiotic use, that antibiotics should be used prudently, that as an individual, as a student, if peradventure you take ill or you fall ill of a bacterial infection and a doctor prescribed amoxicillin for you to take, don't stop taking the drug after the first 2 doses and you start getting well. You are supposed to continue that dose, like finish the drug even when you are already okay. That is what you are supposed to do. So we must enlighten people that if you take your drug haphazardly, like now, you buy antibiotics and you take the first dose and then you start feeling where you feel like, well, let me stop this stuff. I don't need to continue again. That is abuse. You are contributing to the abuse of antibiotics. So we must advocate for this. And as we advocate, we must warn. Warn about what? We must warn about the dangers of misuse. When antibiotic is not used for bacteria-only infection and you are using it because you have catarrh and you go to the pharmacies and you tell them, I have catarrh, give me ampiclos. How does ampiclos treat catarrh? Or how does ampiclos treat influenza? Influenza is a viral infection. You're not supposed to take ampiclos or ampicillin for that. So we must warn about the dangers of the misuse of antibiotics in different settings. And we must also amplify. We must raise our voices. We must educate the public. Like, we must amplify public education effort. And I love what you guys are doing, and I'm happy to relate with you people, and I'm willing to support this initiative however far you guys are willing to take it. We must amplify public education effort that men and women, staff of the university, will be enlightened about the danger of the abuse of antibiotics so that they can use this thing prudently in their various settings. The R in our way stands for recognize. Recognize what? Recognize the role of every individual and yours, that you have a role to play, that it is not enough for us to sit still and we wait for the government to provide all of the basic things that we need in order for us to curb the rise and the spread of antibiotics. That in your own little corner of the world, you have a role to play. That Emmanuel, you have a role to play in helping to win the fight against AMR. That Amarachi Uchenna, you have a role to play. That Belina, you have a role to play. Chiamaka Peter, Emmanuel Eze Maduka, everybody on the call, you have a unique role to play in your own little corner of the world to help us win the fight against antimicrobial resistance. Don't sit down there and wait for the government to make everything okay for you. Practice infection prevention strategy in your closet. Wash your hands all the time. Use antibiotics prudently. If you are a farmer, a poultry rearer, a catfish rearer, a cattle rearer, please don't use antibiotics as growth promoting agent. They are to be used for therapeutic purpose only. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, the E in our way is empower. We must empower individuals with accurate information. Accurate information is necessary. In 2022, on my way to France, I met a colleague on board, and we were discussing about antimicrobial resistance. She works with a very prominent organization in Nigeria that are going about secondary schools, engaging gears in education as per what antibiotics are and how it can be used prudently. And to the amazement of this colleague of mine's program, we engage the students in their monthly flow, and it comes with severe pain. A lot of them go to the drugstore or to chemist shop or to the pharmacies, and they buy antibiotics because they believe that when they take this drug, it helps to reduce the pain. That is abuse of the trending everywhere. Go to the rural area, you see those who are busy hawking antibiotics around freely because of the lawless society that we have found ourselves in. Ladies and gentlemen, we must empower individuals with accurate information. In your religious setting, your religious gathering, make sure that you plead for the opportunity to take the stage and dish out accurate information as per what antimicrobial resistance actually is and how people should be prudent, should be careful about using these wonder drugs, because we are already running out of antibiotics that we can use or antimicrobials that we can use to treat infection. And if it continues like this, then the 39.1 million individuals who are likely to die between 2025 and 2050, it might come to pass. Somebody somewhere, it might be somebody somewhere in a rural area who is abusing antibiotics, and I and my family somewhere in another part of the world are actually facing the consequence of that person's ignorant decision. So you cannot just sit down and fold your hands that it doesn't concern me. My dear friend, it concerns you. You are involved. You have a role to play. And when we work together, and we work together as friends, and we work together as colleagues, and we work together as co-workers with the government, actually do great and mighty things. Thank you so very much for the privilege to be on this call with you. At least we've been able to have this conversation, and I look forward to taking your question if you have any. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much. And that was a very, very detailed session that we've had with you. I wouldn't want to start stating the things I've learned right now because it might look like a new presentation. But please, for those people that have questions, please just quickly raise your hands quickly so that we can take your questions. If you have questions, just signify that you have questions, or you unmute your mic and go ahead with your questions. All right, please feel free if you have questions. 1 minute to go. All right, so if I'll take the silence for no question, that means we all understood everything that has been said today. And of course, looking at the key word for us to take along today. If there's anything going to gain, is the aware. All right. I really much want to appreciate our speaker for that session you've given unto us. Thank you so very much for taking your time to break down all this very distinct and beautiful researches that you've made, as well as things that we can apply as students and different aspects of our lives where we need to contribute to. If there's anything you also have to learn from what he has mentioned, it's not just enough for us to keep spreading information amongst ourselves, professionals or learned people, but we also need to go down, apply all these things to, and help other people that are yet to know about these things, to know the implication of the misuse of antimicrobials, and of course to impede the transfer of these genes everywhere. So I think by now we're empowered. All right, that's the last E on the aware. We're empowered, and by that empowerment, I believe that we're now very good to go with our community program. So I don't know, since we don't have questions, please let's appreciate our speaker again for what he has given to us with emojis. Let's appreciate him. You can simply just put it in the chat box. So thank you, sir. Thank you so much. And if there's any feedback you have, just quickly drop your feedback in 1 minute. Is there anything you would like to say before we pray, sir?
Well, I shared a couple of opportunities that are ongoing at the moment with you. The last time that we spoke, I really would be happy if you guys can take advantage of that. And on the other hand, I'll be happy if you have a wonderful team here, Emmanuel, and you can put this team together, write a paper, and publish. Write a paper and publish, because if you keep working the way you are working, you get access to data, you get access to qualitative data or quantitative data. This stuff can actually be refined together, to say something. And even if you don't even have data, conversations like this that we are having, you can choose to write a viewpoint. The viewpoint is more like a research paper, an expert opinion, or of course, an opinion on something that you feel people should be aware of. And as you make discoveries in your community engagement,
Don't just allow these things to perish. Okay, put them on paper. Somebody somewhere in one part of the world can actually, find this stuff and be happy with it. You don't need to wait until you must have graduated from the university before you publish your first paper or something. Create a team, create a team. You guys can do great and mighty things together. And then finally, there are conferences that you can attend, all expense paid conferences where you can attend and present your paper either as a poster or as an oral presentation. Take advantage of that. Summer is by the side. From July till August, there will be summer internship opportunity in different countries of the world. A few of them are fully funded. You can apply. You can search for this stuff online, apply. And then as I step aside, let us connect. Let us take advantage of LinkedIn. If you are not on LinkedIn yet, please get on board as soon as possible. Meet people, follow people, form a community, join the community of antimicrobial resistance. Visit the Global Health Network, Antimicrobial Resistance Knowledge Hub. There are countless opportunities there that you can take advantage of. There are resources, there are funding opportunities that we upload every now and then. And I feel, giving these things to you free of charge without paying a penny for it can help you to lead research in your own local setting in a manner that this research will be of international standard, wherever you choose to present it in the nearest future. So from the very depth of my heart, Emmanuel, I love what you guys are doing, and I wish you guys best of luck. If there's any area that I can be of help or I can point you guys in the right direction, feel free, and let this 1 month of mentorship session together, let it not be the last time that we get to see ourselves. I look forward to see you guys at the top, and I wish you best of luck in all of your academic endeavor. Thank you so very much for having me.
Thank you so much, sir. That is already so blessed for us. Thank you so much. God bless you, sir. We'll just pray. Thank you for this session. Thank you for our speaker. I pray that you replenish him greatly. We pray that everything we've learned, you help us to apply and help us to make impact in this world where we are. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Thank you, everybody. Please do have a good evening, and we'll reach back later. Thank you. Thank you, sir.